At 5:41 local time in the Strait of Hormuz, the first contact shows up as a faint surface return off the carrier group's port bow. Small, fast, almost invisible. Inside the Combat Information Center, it reads like background interference for less than 2 seconds. Then another signal appears. Then 3 more. Then a full line of them. By the time the Surface Warfare Coordinator speaks, the count has already reached 11. Multiple fast inbound contacts bearing 086 to 110. Range 9 nautical miles. Closing fast. No one aboard the USS Abraham Lincoln needs that translated. Not here. Not in Hormuz. On the bridge, the captain barely reacts. He shifts his gaze from the horizon to the repeater display, then back again. The carrier stays on course. 2 escorting destroyers hold position, one forward to starboard, the other slightly aft to port. Both are already reading more from the water than the naked eye can confirm. At first glance, the sea still seems calm. Blue water, early sunlight, long shadows stretching across the flight deck. But in a place like this, calm can be misleading, especially when 30 small boats stop moving like ordinary civilian traffic. Inside CIC, the contact picture sharpens with every passing second. 18 tracks, then 22, then 27. Finally, the number settles at 30 confirmed. Multiple fast approach profiles. And that changes everything. The boats are not following any commercial route. They are not keeping safe separation. They are not crossing the carrier's path by chance. Instead, they split into 3 clear clusters, each using speed and distance like part of a coordinated plan. One group swings wide toward the starboard side of the formation. Another moves low and flat off the port quarter. The last group pushes almost straight up the center line. Not toward the escorts, but toward the patch of water the carrier itself is about to enter. On the flight deck, yellow shirts pause an active towing evolution. A strike fighter sits chained to the deck with its canopy open and the pilot ladder still hanging. One crewman turns toward the horizon and shields his eyes. From this distance, the boats look like dark marks slicing white scars through the water. Too small for spectacle, too fast to ignore. Bridge, CIC. Small craft contacts increasing speed, lead elements now above 35 knots. That gets everyone's attention. The first radio hail comes from the destroyer screening the carrier's starboard side. Unidentified Iranian small craft. This is a United States Navy warship operating in international waters. Alter course immediately and maintain safe distance. No reply. A second hail follows, then another. English first, then Farsi. Still nothing. The boats continue closing. By now there is nothing random about the geometry. Even from the bridge it is obvious these are not fishermen caught off guard by a carrier group. They are moving with purpose, tightening angles, forcing decisions. With every minute, the available room to maneuver shrinks. And in Hormuz, there is never much room to begin with. The escorts begin adjusting posture without breaking formation. Guns shift by a few degrees. Electro-optical systems lock on and track. Long-range cameras pull sharper images through the glare. Electronic support measures begin collecting low-power emissions from the approaching boats. Short bursts, boat-to-boat traffic, coordination, that matters. Because it means the swarm is not just a crowd. It is being directed. At 5:44 local time, the range drops below 7 nautical miles. On one console, a petty officer starts flagging likely threat boats based on speed, heading, and spacing. Some ride high at the bow, light and aggressive. Others sit heavier in the water, suggesting more men on board, more equipment, more purpose. One contact briefly cuts across a wave line, and the camera catches a shape under a tarp near the bow. Long, tubular. Not enough for a positive identification, but enough to note. Possible mounted system on lead contact. No one overreacts. They record it and continue building the picture. Above them, the carrier remains what it is, a steel city still moving forward. That is what many people misunderstand about ships this size. They do not stop simply because the moment becomes tense. Often, stopping creates even greater risk. And boatswain's mate on the starboard catwalk watches the nearest cluster through binoculars. Half a minute earlier, all he could make out were wakes. Now he can see hull shapes, low profiles, open tops, men packed tightly together, spray bursting around them as they pound through the chop. They're not slowing down, he says, almost under his breath. He is right. At 5:46 local time, the lead elements are inside 5 nautical miles. That is when the mood changes for good. The destroyer off the starboard bow shifts just enough to make the signal unmistakable. Not reckless, not uncertain. Its gun mount tracks left. Its wake widens. A Seahawk helicopter lifts from the deck of the aft escort, nose tipping almost immediately toward the inbound boats. Inside CIC, every track now has a number. Every number has a priority. The captain finally speaks. Set armed response stations. Hold course. Nobody fires unless they cross the line. No one asks where that line is. They already know. Ahead, 30 Iranian boats keep advancing through the morning glare, spreading wider, moving faster, drawing the circle tighter around one of the largest warships on Earth. And for the first time that morning, the men watching from the carrier's deck can see them clearly enough to understand one thing. This is not a distant shadow. This is the first move. At 5:47 local time, the water ahead appears open until you look at the chart. Then the danger becomes clear. The carrier group is entering one of the most confined operating spaces in the world. Commercial traffic lanes, restricted depth. Shoreline always within reach. A Nimitz-class aircraft carrier can rule the open ocean. In the Strait of Hormuz, though, even a ship that massive has to answer to geometry. And geometry is exactly what the Iranians are exploiting. Inside the Combat Information Center, the contact picture has stopped changing in one sense and started changing in another. The total remains at 30. Their formation does not. What first looked like a single rush of fast boats is now unfolding into layers. The outer ring stays wide, crossing back and forth just enough to complicate the screen. The middle ring begins pressing toward the destroyers, forcing them to monitor multiple bearings at the same time. And the inner group, the most dangerous one, keeps pushing toward the water immediately surrounding the carrier. Bridge, CIC, swarm is splitting by function. This is deliberate. No one on the bridge needs to be persuaded. They can see it now, even without optics. Dark hulls slamming over the chop, rising and dropping in rhythm. Their wakes carve the morning sea into converging white lines. Each cluster is working a separate angle. Not enough to overpower by sheer force, but enough to overload decision-making. The carrier continues straight ahead. To anyone watching from the outside, that feels wrong. 30 hostile boats are closing in, and the largest ship in the formation is not turning away. But carriers do not maneuver like patrol craft, especially not in a narrow channel crowded with traffic, escorts close aboard, and aircraft equipment still exposed on deck. A sudden hard turn here would send consequences through the entire formation. It would distort firing arcs, compress safe lanes, and create exactly the kind of confusion the swarm is designed to trigger. So the order does not change. Hold course. Let the escorts and aircraft shape the engagement. At 5:48 local time, the first boat cuts across the bow of the lead destroyer at just over 2 nautical miles. Close enough to force new calculations. The destroyer does not flinch. It answers with posture, gun trained, cameras fixed, warning hails repeated again in English and Farsi. No response. A second boat flashes across the optics feed. This one carries more men than the first. One of them is standing behind a mounted object near the stern, body braced, both hands gripping the frame. The image shakes in the salt haze and spray. No positive identification, but it is clearly not fishing equipment. Possible crew-served weapon. Contact 16. Tagged, logged, prioritized. On the carrier's flight deck, the soundscape shifts. Not louder, sharper, tractors stop where they are. Tie-down crews clear lanes. An aircraft elevator team pauses halfway through a routine check. All of them stare off the starboard side, where the nearest boats are now visible without binoculars. They are smaller than most people would expect. That makes them more unsettling. Low in the water, hard to follow by eye, fast enough to vanish behind their own spray. A chief petty officer points toward the nearest group. Look at the spacing. He is right. They are not crowding together. They are leaving room to maneuver, room to split apart, room to force the Americans to guess which hull matters most. That is what swarm tactics really mean. Not just speed, not just numbers, options. At 5:49 local time, the Seahawk drops lower. Rotowash flattens the water beneath it as it pushes out ahead of the escort screen. Its nose camera feeds live imagery back into CIC. The helicopter does not need to fire. Not yet. For the moment, its real value is visibility. It can see beyond the destroyer's horizon line, down into the wakes, through the clutter. It turns confusion into trackable targets. Air contact has eyes on lead cluster. Count 12. Multiple armed personnel visible. Now the details begin arriving faster. One boat appears to carry a mounted heavy machine gun. Another shows what looks like a rocket rack fixed near the bow. 2 more have extra fuel drums or ammunition cans strapped down aft. Then comes the boat that changes the mood in the room. Lead contact from port side cluster just uncovered a launcher-shaped object. Repeat, launcher-shaped object. The CIC watch officer does not raise his voice. He does not need to. That one phrase shifts the entire room. The destroyer to port edges outward, widening the defensive ring. Not by much, just enough to deny a clean run at the carrier's flank. Its wake curls into a hard white arc behind it. The movement is controlled, but the meaning is clear. No one is getting any closer without consequences. The Iranian boats keep coming anyway. At 5:50 local time, the nearest contact is just 1.8 nautical miles out. Now the swarm is close enough for every harsh detail to stand out. Men crouch low behind shield plates. Faces are wrapped, weapons hang across their backs. Hulls slam into wave crests so violently that spray bursts over the bows and whips across everyone on board. The whole formation looks unstable, not because they are out of control, but because they are willing to operate right at the edge of it. That is what makes them dangerous. Another update reaches the bridge. CPA on 3 contacts now below 1,500 yards and shrinking. For a brief moment, no one says a word. Then the electronic warfare operator breaks the silence from CIC. Short-duration radar sweep from starboard side lead element. Low power. Could be targeting support. Could be. That phrase hangs in the air for half a second. In a moment like this, half a second is enough. The captain looks through the bridge glass at the nearest cluster, now emerging hard from the morning glare, and gives the next order. Graduated response authorized. Warning line has been crossed. No one reacts with relief. No one feels victory. It simply marks the end of one stage and the beginning of another. Outside, the Seahawk banks sharply and drops even lower over the inbound boats. The destroyers tighten their sectors. Gunners settle behind their sights. The carrier stays on course, massive and steady, while 30 Iranian boats continue driving into the narrowing water around it. There is still time for them to turn away. None of them do. At 5:52 local time, the first shot on the water is not lethal. It is a warning flare. A bright streak launches from the starboard destroyer and cuts through the morning haze, arcing down ahead of the lead Iranian boat. For half a second, the red glow flashes across spray and steel. The message could not be clearer. Turn away now. The boat does not turn. It keeps charging forward, bow high, engines screaming, throwing a sharp V of white water behind it. 2 more boats surge with it, treating the flare not as a warning, but as a reference point. One angles slightly right toward the destroyer's outer screen. Another continues straight toward the narrowing space between the escort and the carrier's projected path. Inside CIC, the picture compresses all at once. Lead contacts inside 1,000 yards. Port cluster accelerating. Starboard inner group maintaining intercept. No one is shouting. No one is rushing words. Every report comes clear and controlled. Then the first openly hostile act leaves no room for doubt. A sharp flash breaks from one of the boats in the starboard cluster. Small, sudden, low over the water, a split second later something strikes the sea off the destroyer's bow and throws up a narrow column of spray. This is no warning shot, no misunderstanding. The line is gone. The response comes immediately. Engage designated hostile contacts. The order moves through the formation like current through wire. On the destroyer's starboard wing, a gunner opens up with a short, controlled burst from a mounted heavy weapon. Not a wild spray, not panic fire. A precise line walks across the water ahead of the lead boat, then into the hull when it still refuses to break away. The rounds strike low. The boat jerks sideways. Its bow digs in. One engine blows out in a burst of gray smoke. A second later, the hull rolls hard to port and vanishes behind its own spray plume. The Seahawk is already overhead. It drops to a punishingly low altitude, rotor wash hammering the sea flat beneath it as the crew tracks the next 3 boats in the same run. Through the nose camera, armed men are now visible in sharp detail. Life vests, headsets, wrapped faces. One man kneels behind a mounted weapon. Another lifts a tube-shaped launcher, trying to steady it against the pounding hull. Too late. The helicopter's door gun answers with a tight burst. The rounds walk across the boat's bow. The launcher disappears into splinters and spray. The hull hooks violently left, crashes into its own wake, and nearly throws 2 men overboard. At 5:53 local time, the entire swarm reacts, not by retreating, by splitting apart. Some boats swing wide, forcing the escorts to divide attention between immediate threats and possible flanking runs. Others press even harder, betting that speed and confusion can still crack the outer ring. The sea ahead of the carrier turns into a live grid of crossing wakes, every line carrying intent. Then the first rocket appears. It launches from farther back than the others, from a boat hidden within the middle layer. The smoke trail is brief and vicious. The weapon looks unstable the instant it leaves the tube. It skips above the waterline, passes wide of the destroyer, and detonates off the port side in a low orange blast that throws spray across empty sea. No hit. But that no longer changes anything. Everyone in the strike group has seen enough. On the carrier, the flight deck transforms. Aircraft are pulled clear of exposed positions. Yellow shirts move fast but never waste motion. Ordnance crews secure equipment. Fire teams and stretcher crews are already staged below access points. No one is waiting to discover whether the next round lands closer. One of the boats nearly does. It slips through the outer confusion and drives straight for the gap between the carrier and its port-side escort, riding flat and fast, too committed now to turn without losing control. For a split second, it seems like the boat might break through the inner ring. It does not. The port-side destroyer shifts just enough to shut the lane. Its guns are already locked in. A short, controlled burst cuts across the water and slams into the boat's forward section. The hull rises, twists, and flashes into a brief sheet of fire before dropping back into the churn. Debris scatters behind it. The opening is gone. At 5:54 local time, 6 boats are now out of the fight, burning, drifting, or torn apart by precise defensive fire. But the swarm is not done. It is adapting. The surviving Iranian boats stop rushing in on straight lines. Instead, they begin using offset angles, crossing through each other's wakes, trying to overload visual tracking and disrupt firing discipline. One group feints toward the destroyers. Another cuts closer to commercial traffic farther north, forcing the Americans to account for background clutter and safe engagement lanes. Inside CIC, the updates keep coming. Track 23 armed. Track 09 maneuvering for stern approach. Track 12, possible second launcher. Recommend reprioritize port inner group. The captain aboard the carrier hears every word and reveals nothing. His ship has not altered course. Not once. That matters. It means the center of the formation is still intact. It means the swarm has not forced its will onto the group. But it has changed the fight. At the far edge of the surface picture, fresh signals begin to appear. Not boats, not yet identified, something farther back, beyond the immediate clash. The electronic warfare team picks up a heavier burst of emissions from the Iranian shoreline. Radar activity, communications traffic, queuing signals. The boats were never meant to do this alone. Over the water, smoke from disabled hulls begins to flatten in the rising heat. The Seahawk rolls into another pass. The escorts continue firing in disciplined, brutal intervals, and the carrier keeps moving straight through the middle of it all, a mobile airfield boxed in by speed, steel, and seconds. The swarm has lost boats. It has not lost purpose. And now, with the first layer broken apart, everyone in the American formation understands the same thing. This was only the door being kicked open. By 5:58 local time, the surface fight has found a rhythm. For the Americans, it is no longer chaos. For the Iranians, maybe. For the 30 boats that came in fast, spread wide, and tried to overload the screen with speed and proximity. Absolutely. But inside the U.S. formation, the noise is being turned into structure. Targets have numbers, sectors have owners. Every burst, every maneuver, every warning call is now part of a system working exactly as designed. That is when the balance begins to shift. Bridge, CIC, surface picture stabilizing. Recommends sector engagement by priority groups. The reply comes back immediately. Approved. The escorts stop responding boat by boat. Now they are fighting the swarm as a pattern. The destroyer to starboard takes the fast movers, trying to hook around the carrier's bow. The portside escort locks onto the cluster, attempting to slide aft and probe for a stern-side approach. The Seahawk stays overhead, no longer chasing individual hulls blindly, but marking the boats that still show clear intent to break into the inner ring. That changes everything, because once intent is isolated, the picture becomes much simpler. At 6 o'clock local time, the helicopter swings wide, then cuts back low over the water. Through its optics, the surviving Iranian boats no longer look like one unified threat. Some are still pushing forward, some are hesitating, some are clearly searching for a way out without making that choice too obvious. The early aggression is gone. In its place is something far less useful in a close fight. Doubt. A 5-boat cluster off the carrier's starboard quarter tries one last smart move. It targets the only opening left, a narrow interval between the carrier's outer weight and the destroyer screening forward. The timing is sharp. The approach is fast. 2 other boats feint farther east to divide attention. From above, the Seahawk spots the move instantly. Air contact to surface action. 5 boats. Vector 310. Inner push. Lead boat armed. Rear boat trailing fuel or ammunition aft. Inside CIC, the track numbers light up together. The destroyer does not lunge toward them. It adjusts only enough to close the angle and preserve the firing solution. That small correction marks the difference between a disciplined Navy and a panicked one. No wasted movement, no overreaction, just geometry. Then the Americans spring the trap. The helicopter moves first, cutting hard across the lead boat's bow, rotor wash blasting spray into the faces of the men on board. They duck on instinct. That fraction of a second matters. It breaks their sightline and ruins their timing. At the same moment, the destroyer fires a short, controlled burst. Not at the whole group, only at the lead hull. The boat vanishes into spray and fragments. The second boat swerves left, straight into the wake turbulence of the first. It slams down so hard off a wave crest that one of the men aboard is thrown sideways against the mount behind him. The third tries to cut right and finds the carrier's security ring already there. Too close, too exposed. Nowhere left to go. Another burst from the escort cuts across the water in front of it, then into the engine block. Smoke pours out at once. The hull loses speed and starts to yaw. The last two boats break away, not cleanly. One nearly collides with the disabled boat ahead of it, cutting across its wake so sharply that the hull skips and shudders. In less than 10 seconds, the entire formation is gone. That is the moment the Iranian swarm truly starts to unravel. At 6:02 local time, it does not fall apart all at once. Swarms never do. They begin to come apart. A few boats still push hard from farther out, trying to look dangerous enough to keep American attention fixed on them. Others drift toward the edges of nearby commercial lanes, using civilian traffic and background clutter as partial cover. One boat circles wide off the port side, perhaps searching for an opening, perhaps simply trying to stay alive long enough to receive new instructions. But the central fact has changed. They are no longer controlling the fight. Across the carrier strike group, that shift is visible even to sailors who have never seen the tactical display. The first minutes felt like a siege. Now the mood is different, harder, sharper, more controlled. Deck crews remain in emergency posture. Aircraft stay secured. Firefighting teams are still staged and ready. But the edge of panic is gone. The men who were staring at the horizon, waiting for the worst, are now watching American systems perform exactly the way they were built to perform. One petty officer standing on the starboard catwalk as another Iranian boat breaks away mutters under his breath, "They're starting to feel it." He is right. At 6:04 local time, another cluster makes one final coordinated push. 5 boats this time, packed tighter than the others, driving for the slot between the carrier and the aft escort. It is the most dangerous move the Iranians have attempted since the first shots. If even one of those hulls slips through, the engagement could shift again. But now the Americans are waiting for exactly this. The Seahawk locks the lead boat in its optics and holds it there. The aft escort comes left just enough to narrow the corridor. The forward destroyer keeps pressure on the outer boats so they cannot support the run. Every American platform is now handling a different part of the same problem. The lead Iranian boat presses on anyway. It gets closer than any of the others have since the fight began. Then the escort fires. A short burst rips into the hull. The bow lifts, stalls, and crashes back down in an explosion of white water. The second boat turns away almost at once. The third overcorrects and slams sideways into the wake of the first. The last two never even reach the line. They peel off while they still have the chance. Just like that, the last credible inner ring attempt is over. At 6:05 local time, the message comes up from CIC to the bridge. Outer security ring re-established. That is the sentence every ship in the formation needed to hear. Not because the danger is over, but because it confirms the swarm has failed. More than half of the Iranian boats are now destroyed, disabled, scattered, or holding well outside the zone that mattered most. The carrier is still on course. The formation is still intact. The Americans have taken the fight away from raw speed and handed it back to systems, discipline, and controlled force. Then the electronic warfare operator speaks again. New emissions from shoreside, increased radar activity, possible queuing from coastal batteries or airborne drone support. The bridge goes quiet, because everyone understands what that could mean. The boats may have been the attack, or they may have been the setup. At 6:07 local time, the sea is no longer full of momentum. It is full of consequences. Smoke hangs low over the water where the first boats went down. Broken wakes smear across the surface in every direction, crossing, fading, dissolving. What rushed in as a hard, unified swarm now looks uneven, damaged, uncertain. Off the carrier's starboard side, one Iranian boat lies dead in the water. Bow low, stern drifting broadside to the swell. Farther out, another is still moving, but only barely, trailing a thin gray ribbon of smoke behind it. And through the center of all of it, the USS Abraham Lincoln keeps going. That is what matters most. The carrier has not stopped, it has not turned away, it has not given up the lane. Inside the Combat Information Center, the surface picture is finally clean enough to read as a whole. The surviving boats are no longer converging. They are separating. Some are turning outward in pairs. Others are falling back alone, trying to make retreat look like repositioning. A few still linger at range, just close enough to matter. Too far to strike, too near to ignore. Bridge, CIC. Multiple contacts opening distance. No coordinated inner push observed. For the first time in more than 20 minutes, that sounds like progress. Not victory, not yet, just progress. At 6:08 local time, one last cluster appears to make a choice. 4 boats, maybe 5 depending on how the spray hides them, accelerate off the carrier's aft starboard quarter. This is no longer a full swarm, it's a final attempt. Small enough to stay fast, still large enough to matter if the formation slips even for a moment. It doesn't. The Seahawk spots them first, already circling wide after its last pass. Its optics lock in before the boats fully commit. Air contact to surface action. Final group pushing from aft starboard. Range 1.6 nautical miles. Lead boat armed. 2 trailing close. The aft escort responds with a subtle adjustment, just enough to shut down the corridor. No sharp turn, no wasted motion, just precise positioning, placing steel and firepower exactly where it needs to be. The carrier itself doesn't react at all. It stays steady, massive, unreadable, moving down the channel as if everything happening around it is just passing weather. That steadiness breaks the attackers more than anything else. Because swarm tactics only work if the target starts behaving like prey. The USS Abraham Lincoln never does. At 6:09 local time, the final group pushes in anyway. The lead boat surges forward, slamming across the chop, engine screaming as the hull skips over the tops of waves. 2 others try to stay tight behind it, close enough to take advantage of any hesitation. A 4th trails wider, maybe carrying extra fuel, maybe equipment, maybe simply hoping to rush through if the others draw the first response. The response comes instantly. The Seahawk cuts low across the lead boat's bow, rotor wash flattening the water beneath it. The men on board throw up arms against the spray, vision disrupted for just a moment. That moment is enough. The escorting destroyer fires almost at the same time. A tight, controlled stream reaches across the gap and strikes the forward section of the hull. The effect is immediate. The lead boat yaws, violently left nearly rolling over. The second boat breaks formation to avoid it, only to find itself exposed, alone, with no clear path forward. A second burst cuts across the water just ahead of its bow. This time, that's enough. It turns away hard, its wake curling white as it abandons the run. The third boat hesitates. That hesitation ends everything. Within seconds, the group stops being a group. One is crippled. One has already turned away. One drifts wide. The outer boat, seeing the corridor closed and the helicopter still overhead, breaks off before it even enters effective range. Just like that, the last serious push toward the inner ring is gone. At 6:10 local time, the call comes up. Bridge, CIC. Final push broken. No contacts inside exclusion line. The bridge goes quiet after that. Not empty, professional. Because everyone understands exactly what that means. 30 Iranian boats came at a U.S. aircraft carrier in one of the narrowest and most dangerous waterways on Earth. And they did not stop it. On the flight deck, the emergency posture remains, but the tension begins to ease. Yellow shirts move again with purpose instead of urgency. Damage control teams stay ready, still watching, still listening. But there are no fires to fight, no major damage reports, no escalating chain of impact. The crew had prepared for the worst. What they got instead was proof. Proof that speed alone isn't enough. Proof that numbers alone aren't enough. Proof that in tight waters, under pressure, with seconds to decide and no margin for error, discipline wins. At 6:12 local time farther out, the remaining Iranian boats continue pulling away. Some limp back, some move faster. None of them stay together. The sea behind them is marked by drifting debris, thin fuel sheets, and the widening gap between what they planned and what actually happened. The carrier strike group does not pursue. It doesn't need to. The point has already been made. The USS Abraham Lincoln continues its transit through Hormuz, still guarded, still alert, every sensor still watching. Off to one side, smoke from a disabled boat flattens in the heat and fades into the morning haze. Ahead, the water opens just a little more. Not much, just enough. Because this was never really about destroying a carrier. It was about forcing it to hesitate, to turn, to lose control of the lane. That never happened. The swarm came in fast, loud, and committed. The response came back colder, tighter, and more precise. And in the end, what remained on the water wasn't a victory for speed or shock. It was a lesson. In Hormuz, 30 small boats looked dangerous. A U.S. carrier strike group looked inevitable.